From interviews to jail calls, Ditto Transcripts delivers fast, confidential, and court-ready transcription for law enforcement agencies. Ditto is CJIS compliant and is already working with agencies all over the U.S., including the Washington State Patrol and the National Park Service Investigations Unit. Get started now at dittotranscripts.com. That's dittotranscripts.com. To hear details about all the applications of Ditto Transcripts and exactly why this is a key solution for your organization's workload issues, check out episode 232. Law enforcement and government agencies struggle with parking citations, often because no one will pay them. Boots or other devices are costly, and they invite confrontation when implied and later removed by enforcing employees. With Tire Tag, you can avoid many hurdles and ultimately promote public safety and revenue collection. To learn more, visit tiretag.com. For a thorough conversation on how Tire Tag can help your agency in revenue collection, visit episode 204. That's 204. The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests of this show do not represent their employing agency, department, or organization. All information should be regarded as anecdotal, contextual, and educational, and should not be misinterpreted as legal or medical advice. Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. Welcome back, everyone. We often talk about wellness. We talk about team dynamics. We talk about communication and trust and leadership. A lot of times that comes with non-toxic leadership and conversations about how people can show up their best so they can do the job that they sign up for. And I'm going to speak a little bit about organizational wellness. And really what that comes from was reading and working through Soul Therapy by Thomas More. Thomas More, I may have referenced him a couple times, and I want to do a book summary, kind of some book review notes on this book and some others by him, but he's a depth psychologist. So I find it extremely fascinating that he has a section on the book which speaks really to organizational wellness and these dynamics and culture. In the book, he talks a lot about therapy as not just a profession or an act, but like a practice. And it's not to say that we are therapists and peer support or we should be therapists to our friends, but he really talks on the caring of the soul in these different relationships and dynamics. And so recognizing that there is a degree of therapy in concept and in energy when we're trying to take care of others, when we're trying to take care of our community, and when we're trying to take care of organizations, government, and vice versa, how they're affecting us. So rather than talk about the whole book, there is this one section I want to read because it is so significant for organizational health and wellness. And pretty soon into this little excerpt, I think you'll see where this intersects with first responder organizations, those of us in these types of professions, and you might get distinct images and examples of what does track with this, or good examples and not so good examples. So with that, I just want to read a section here. And this section is from page 175, Soul in the Workplace. The workplace itself may be screaming with difficult emotions and relationships. Hierarchies are often a problem. Successful people can't deal well with authority and leadership and make it life difficult for those under them. Work usually creates anxiety about making enough money and keeping a job. It may either support or interfere with important relationships. A person's sense of worth and the very meaning of life often depends on what happens at work. The workplace teems with matter of soul. Okay, so even in that section, we're talking about hierarchies being a problem. And we all know that the hierarchical dynamics in first responder jobs can be trying for some people, right? Ego gets in the way for those with power and rank. Ego gets in the way for those without power and rank. And so it's just playing that out. Work creating anxiety, that's a tenuous thing about people not being happy in their situation, but they have mouths to feed, right? There's stability. You got to save money for retirement, all these things. You got your pension to think about. And also, this last line, a person's sense of worth and the very meaning of life often depends on what happens at work. Man, how often have we had a bad day, a bad week, a bad year at work, and it dramatically affects our own well being and how we feel in life, like how we're navigating this thing called life, how it bleeds into our time off, into our home life. So I'm going to keep reading. Workers have to spend hours with others who are quite different from them. They may be competing for advancement, recognition, a good placement and success, vying for a higher position, or just a corner office with a window. There may be erotic attractions, inappropriate friendships, and abuse of authority. We all know the memes. This is me aside. We all know the memes where that occurs. And a lot of those stereotypes are rooted in some type of truth. We may have recognized that in our own agency, in neighboring agencies, or stories of yesteryear. All right, I continue on. Quote, in some workplaces, the social climate is toxic, and the workplace itself may be in need of therapy. This is me again. How many of us can recognize a time or place, a unit, or maybe it's the agency in our region where you're like, oh my gosh, I hear all the drama. Maybe that department does need a therapist, like a department therapist. And then the flip being, how does that come about? Right? Is that like a consultant? Is that someone analyzing like logistics and dynamics? Is that a presentation from HR? Like, what does that look like? Okay, back to the book. Many businesses suffer from a lack of psychological understanding amongst leaders and workers. People can't see past the surface of relationship issues or authority problems. Therefore, many companies would benefit from some basic ongoing education in psychological matters. Workers do their best to survive, but they don't have the skills or insights that would allow them to deal with many issues that come up. Therapy there could begin with education, learning how to detect what's going on beneath the surface of emotional problems and learning some simple ways of dealing with them. Basic psychological ideas are not so complicated and can be taught. Today, corporate coaches help management and the workforce deal with their problems, but coaching is not exactly psychotherapy and businesses could use more help. Emotional factors leap out in competitions for projects and for leadership roles, but they're usually unconscious, and so when emotions become intense, they become destructive. Deep coaching, a movement in the general field of coaching today, can move closer to psychotherapy, at least in the sense of soul care, helping society flourish through care of the workplace. And then he goes on, if I were going to help a company become more psychologically sophisticated, here are a few of the many issues I'd focus on. And so I wanted to keep reading that because I want people to think about not like hiring somebody per se, because I know that's not a viable thing. I mean, it takes a lot of money to hire like a corporate coach or someone that's an expert in organizational design, and sometimes that might not be the right uh, prescription for the issue at hand. But from a depth psychologist to present some of these ideas, and I'm not going to read them all because there's 10 of them. I just want to underline some of these things, and I want us all to think about if this is a present thing in our teams or aspects of our culture, how do we best address it? How do we best remedy it? Like, is it through, well, I'll just leave it there for now. So a few of them. Understand that abusive, controlling leaders are usually secretly insecure and weak. Okay, so you can think about that. We've all seen those types of bosses or trainers or managers. He goes on to say, if you don't perceive this contradiction, your way of dealing with them may be ineffective. And with that goes to thinking about human nature. Jealousy and envy are expected in hierarchical organizations. They are raw expressions of more basic desires. You may have to be patient with these symptoms. Don't try to get rid of them, but help them ripen into more positive energies. Goes on, a person in authority may not deal with their position well because of bad experiences in the family and in childhood. You may need some empathetic, deep discussions before you can work out solutions with them. I like that one because it helps us understand this concept of empathy. And it's not to say like talk to the difficult person about their childhood, like not at all, but it is helping us realize that everybody's a human being. Everyone's got their stuff, everyone's got their dirt or their skeletons in their closet. And it's not to excuse behavior, but it is to understand that bringing grace to the situation a lot of times can make things easier, right? We think about driving down the freeway, road rage. A lot of people got a lot of stuff going on. It's not to excuse road rage, especially for those troopers out there, but it is as a civilian just driving around. Like, what do you bring to that situation? What can you do to curb it? What can you do? Another one. People tend to develop hostile feelings towards each other when they don't have opportunities to really get acquainted. So that makes me think about, quote unquote team building, but not like team building exercise, but where do you actually interact with people to get to know them? Where do you see the commonality? Where do you see the common mission? Where do you see us working together where we're achieving this awesome thing? Another point, being critical and vocal about fellow workers may stem from insecurity, an overwhelming need to keep the job, or habits learned at home. Right. So this is understanding some of these stressors that may contribute to how we are interacting or how people are interacting with us. Just an understanding of that can help things move a little bit smoother. A business can't provide all deep therapy for all its workers, but it can create a work environment that's not emotionally toxic. Okay, so we are talking about not bringing in a person or people to fix our issues, but recognize how can we actually help remove some of the toxic aspects of our environment. And that's where I would defer to a lot of positive people focused leadership. That's where I defer towards open communication, creating environments of trust, creating a culture of peer support. So, not just peer support in writing, but where people actually have somebody where they can connect with, somebody they can get resource from or referred to resources. But also it's that trust aspect again. Therapy always begins with listening is number 8. Are you looking for help with your rest and recovery, wanting to optimize your sleep and prime performance? Well, New Calm is built on neuroscience, and it's been used by special operators, SportTAC, pro sports teams, and many, many more for years. To learn more and access the best deals of the year, go to newcalm.co/grit. That's Newcalm, NUCALM.co/grit. So any business that could create a structure in which just listening to workers' issues could help with morale. I don't know how many times I've heard that said about different good bosses where someone has shared, they might not have been able to do anything specific for that issue. They might not have had the power or the audience, but at least they listened, at least they cared. And we know that's a thing. So any way that we can provide that, regardless of what rank, because there's leadership at all ranks, I think that's a very fair recognition. The next point, the physical environment can also soothe the soul. Fresh air, plants and trees, water, a place to walk, comfortable workstation. Okay, so he's talking about the impact of environment. And I think this is really specifically impactful for first responders because a lot of the environment's out in the field. And I'm not talking about the specific neighborhood, although that could be a factor. But where you're going in the neighborhood is usually not the most positive, brilliant, beautiful, bright, fresh environment. And so, if that is the job, how can we manipulate that? Like, what toggle switches do we control? And where my head goes to is where we use our discretionary time. And what I think is specifically nurturing for the soul is going to interact with venues like the schools, right? For officers to get involved with schools is huge. Years ago, my department had a program where the schools wanted officers to come interact at lunchtime, elementary schools, middle schools, recess. Some teachers would reach out saying, hey, like, do we have an officer that can talk about safety tips? Hey, we're doing reading. Does an officer want to read this children's book? Like, those are extremely positive environments. Uh, it's very it's very refreshing. And if you feel like you don't want to do that or it sounds terrible, I would invite you to explore and ask yourself why. Because I felt very much the same earlier in my career. I did not want to be bothered with it. I wanted to be on the street. I wanted to be in a position where I could get me and my canine to the location to arrest these dangerous felons, what have you. But ultimately, why I was so resistant is because it's kind of what I needed, was to be around that positivity, be around some of the reasons why we do this thing, why we do this job, what's at stake. Another controllable is, our department, like our facilities. And I know that could be very budget dependent, but it doesn't take a lot to have some positive, resources. That might be, a working kitchen, place where people can kind of recharge, refresh, a gym, a very simple gym where you can move around, or you know, a a training center, perhaps where it's semi-secure. You can be away from the public. You can walk around. You can get some fresh air. Shoot, you could do walking laps or sprints in the parking lot. Uh, you can use the fire tower, get some stairs, get your blood moving. Right. These are environmental factors that we generally can have some degree of control over. So think about physical environment, ways that you can hack that. Maybe we can propose some things that are not super expensive up the chain. Number 10, man, I didn't really mean to read all these. I skipped a couple, but hit almost all of them. But number 10, images affect the soul deeply. So, all right. So that's a majority of the points, not all of them, but hopefully it gives you some thoughts as far as how we can how we can affect some of these situations, how we can affect the dynamics with regard to our work culture. Because when I read this section, I felt like it would resonate with so many law enforcement, policing agencies, so many first responder organizations. Ultimately, there's a lot of things that we can do to affect our own organizational or team wellness and culture. And a lot of that starts with just how we show up, like what energy we bring to the room, what energy we bring to the team, what we say, how we say it, and how we intend, like what intentions we put into the actions we do. So I'll follow up with a part later on after that list where Thomas More says a soulful space is one in which people in it feel like human beings, having positive and constructive emotions. It's not so technological and industrial that it makes the people into machines. It is a warm human environment that is not difficult to create. You just need the imagination for it. And a humane environment would make more productive and positive workers. I don't think any of us would disagree with that. And I think when we think about, all the dynamics that make first responder work especially challenging for individuals and communities is because of the nature of the work and because of the bias it injects into your worldview in your life, day-to-day view, where you're seeing all this negativity. You're surrounded by it. You're going into conflict. You're going into chaos. You're going into violence and physical trauma a lot of times, right? Injuries, just bad situations. And so when we think about the job, it is not one where we will succeed from people being machines, from people being robots. I've spoken about that a lot. A lot of guests on here have spoken about that a lot. Ultimately, we are humans trying to help humans. And so the more we can return to that, the more we can focus on that and bring whatever that evokes in you as you listen to these concepts and this illustration on workplace and some of the toxic aspects that may exist and why they may exist. I felt like it was very impactful for the things that we're frequently talking about. So again, um, that is Thomas More, Soul Therapy, also author of Care of the Soul. That one I felt was a very constructive, positive read. A lot of deep dive, but also very accessible, like easy read, easy to reflect on. Whereas some of these other texts, other depth psychologists that I've been looking at, psychological or philosophical work, can be really dense. And so I'm not the most adept reader of just like reading chapters and just understanding it. A lot of times, it is something that I have to dip into and ponder and potentially reflect and journal on. So, I was excited to share that with you. I'm excited to hear what it may have evoked in you. Hopefully there's something constructive where you heard something and that kicked up some motivation to have some positive conversations, to reflect on how you want to bring your energy to your work or to your team. Maybe it even brought up some ideas on how you want to mobilize like a policy suggestion and start working with your bosses, which would be pretty fantastic. So, as always, let me know what you thought of the episode. I always appreciate y'all going on Apple or Spotify and giving a rating review. It definitely helps the show immensely find more listeners or be found by more listeners. Very awesome to be on this journey with you. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. bluegritwellness@gmail.com. And if you're not on the newsletter for all the good stuff weekly, bluegritwellness.com. You could subscribe for free. Thank you so much. Take care. Hey, Grit Nation. I got a couple things I'm really excited to share with you. The first is that the newsletter, free newsletter, is now live. All you got to do is go to bluegritwellness.com to subscribe. It is basically a summary of everything good and gritty for the week, including some exclusive content specifically on the newsletter. That'll include wellness information, nutrition, things that you ask, Q&A, as well as updates about Blue Grit, offerings, news, things that'll help you out. Next order of business. For years, I've been asked what kind of nutritional supplements I use because I've been into learning about health, nutrition, fitness for so long. And for years, I landed on NutriCost. And it's only a recent thing that I've been an affiliate, but now I get to pass the savings on to you. So if you go to NutriCost.com, use code BLUEGRIT, that's just BLUEGRIT, you get 10% off. Literally just a couple items, you get free shipping. And the reason why I found it was because it was always the best quality for the best value. So I always recommend people look at the ingredient list, look out for things like sucralose. It has the lowest amount of unnatural ingredients if you're looking for that kind of thing, whether it's your whey protein isolate, which I toggle on and off of, or organic vegan protein to cut down on different chemicals that I just generally like to avoid. It's not just protein, it's creatine and minerals, vitamins, things like L-theanine and magnesium, which I use regularly to help my nervous system power down. It aids rest and recovery, promoting better sleep. So whatever it is, go to NutriCost.com and you can just enter the code BLUEGRIT to get your 10% off. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.